Welcome to the Now. I'm Ashley.
I'm Mica.
Is the 3DS the days getting just a little bit more numbered? Nintendo says they're not ready to call it quits, but one of its biggest franchises may be through with the much-loved handheld.
Poor 3DS.
I know,
it's
it's passing of an era for sure.
Yeah, well, it's got an impressively deep lineup of games. The handheld is definitely getting on the old side, and some are wondering if it's headed for the sad old console graveyard.
We'll join the DS, the Game Boys. Hey, at least they'll all be together.
That's true.
Now, on the one hand, this does make a lot of sense. We're in the 7th year of the 3DS and its hardware, which, let's be honest, I love it as a platform, but the hardware was never that impressive to begin with. It's like a 240p screen or something, and it's looking pretty dated these days. And Nintendo already has a new, really very popular handheld system. That would be the Switch.
Okay, but back to the news. Recently, in an interview with IGN, a Game Freak director sorta made it sound like the upcoming Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon games might be Pokemon's last hurrah on the 3DS, which is a big deal.
It's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
So Game Freak director Shigeru Omori explained that his company has tried to make maximum use of 3DS's hardware with each Pokemon game. He said, when we were making Pokemon X and Y, we really were trying to push the 3DS system to its absolute limits, which is what we thought we'd done. But when Sun and Moon came around, we completely redesigned the system and actually ended up pushing the 3DS even further to what we thought was the most we could draw out of it.
But that might be coming to an end after Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon release on November 17th. You might recall that the games were announced in June, featuring an alternate story to Pokemon Sun and Moon, and of course, some brand new Pokemon.
It wouldn't be another year of Pokemon without a couple of new Pokemon. Omori said, with Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, we've tried to really push the system to its absolute limits, and we're now feeling that perhaps this is the maximum of what we can get out. So we're really treating Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon as the culmination of our work with the 3DS system.
Yeah, it's that word culmination. Yeah, that got a lot of people wondering if this is it for Pokemon on the 3DS. Of course, the 3DS is coming to the end of its life cycle, and maybe this is Games Freak way of saying goodbye. Plus, we do know that it's working on a mainline Pokemon game for the Switch, which would be the first time such a game has come to a traditional console.
Well,
if you call the Switch traditional, quote unquote. Whether or not that's the long-rumored Pokemon Stars, or if they're just going to use another entire gen for the Switch, we don't know yet. Maybe it'll be called Pokemon Wall Paint.
Wall paint?
I don't know. I looked at a wall and that was the first thing
from?
that came to me.
I don't know. Pokemon Tech. Pokemon Future
Mecha.
Pokemon Space.
There we go.
It could be anything, really. And yeah, if it's true that Pokemon is in fact done with the 3DS after Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, could mean that the system's days are a little bit more numbered than they were before. Pokemon is the handheld's most popular franchise by far, and if it's done with the 3DS, it may point to other developers also starting to sunset support for the platform.
If this is curtains for the 3DS, it's definitely had a good run.
I love that system.
Yeah, while it never sold as well as the original DS, it was still a really popular handheld in an age where dedicated gaming portables seemed to be going out of style. That is, you know, until Big Brother Switch came along and everybody wanted one.
Yeah, right, and now we're all carrying these gigantic things around. You might remember the 3DS came out 2011. It was the successor to the wildly popular Nintendo DS. I remember the original DS. It was like big ass brick.
The gray thing.
Oh yeah.
The first game you could play was Mario, and you were like, wow, these graphics.
WarioWare was sick.
Yes.
And while the 3DS stumbled a little bit out of the gate, it did go on to sell more than 67 million units, which sure, in comparison to the DS is like 150 million. It doesn't sound super impressive, but 67 million's a lot. And that was boosted by the usual suspects: Mario games, Mario Kart, and of course, Pokemon. The handheld sold particularly well last year because of Pokemon Sun and Moon, which sold record numbers after the release of Pokemon Go and got all kinds of people back into Pokemon, which again underscores how important that franchise is to Nintendo.
You don't see Ace Attorney making those numbers.
No, although it does get musicals.
It's true! For its part, Nintendo continues to insist that it's not done supporting the 3DS with new games. At E3, Nintendo of America President Reggie Fils-Aimé said Nintendo will support the 3DS well into 2018 and beyond.
So the first quarter of 2019.
Yeah, he described their strategy like this. The way we continue to make Nintendo 3DS vibrant as a platform is, first, we continue to innovate from a form factor standpoint. So the new 2DS XL is just the latest for us having a form factor innovation. We know colors are a key differentiator. Consumers love the variety of different colors.
And we will buy new ones every single time when a new color comes out that we like because, let's be honest, we're suckers.
Yup. And also the larger screen and the different form factor in the 2DS family, we think is going to drive and continue to drive the 3DS platform.
And they are still releasing a lot more iterations of the 3DS and, well, more recently the clamshell 2DS with a variety of colors, which is still 3DS family. Now, whether or not that's going to make people forget the increasingly dated hardware, though, that's another question.
I forget. I'm trying to get one.
Which one are you trying to get?
I'm trying to get the Pikachu one, even though it's just sold in Japan. But the Pokeball one is a good runner-up. But with the Switch's portability and super strong launch, lots of people have speculated that that's where Nintendo's focus will be going forward. But Fizeme has tried to knock down that speculation, saying that the Switch is not a replacement for the 3DS, but I'm sorry, if Animal Crossing and Ace Attorney comes out on the Switch, bye.
You just chuck 3DS over the shoulder. Now, he explained that Switch is a home console that you can take with you and play with anyone, anywhere, anytime. It really is meant to deliver that great home console performance. You just happen to be able to undock it and take it with you, which is a key innovation. Which makes it sound an awful lot like a handheld. But he added, we are greedy and we want Nintendo 3DS right alongside it. So there you go, Reggie, Nintendo, they want you to take 2 handhelds with you at all times. And to be perfectly honest, that's what I'm doing at the moment, because I've got Ever Oasis and it's on 3DS, and I would love to have it on Switch, but it's not there, so now I have 2 handhelds in my bag. Thanks, Nintendo.
But if it was,
I would absolutely check out the 3DS. I would love to have pretty much any 3DS game these days. If I'm playing it, I'm like, God, I wish this was on the Switch.
And there's the problem right there.
Yes.
There might be an actual reason why Nintendo says that it's sticking with the 3DS, because it needs it. Financially. In June, industry analyst Daniel Ahmad tweeted some data that shows that the 3DS accounts for more than 51% of Nintendo's business.
That's a lot of percents.
That's technically more than half. Now that will obviously change as Nintendo sells more and more Switches, and it is an important caveat that Wii U sales didn't exactly offset those numbers, and the Switch has had a much stronger debut that won't be reflected until their next fiscal year numbers. But still, the 3DS represents a huge chunk of Nintendo's revenue for the past few years, and it's not going to throw that away no matter how old the hardware is getting, as long as it's still bringing money and no matter how much we want to chuck them over our shoulders. That could be a reason why we saw the new, more powerful new 3DS systems with faster processors, as well as the 2DS redesigns that can take advantage of the 3DS library while cutting manufacturing costs on the hardware. Or Nintendo could just be trying to squeeze a few more years out of 3DS before chucks it!
Before they also throw it over the shoulder. Not everyone, though, is buying into this whole 2 platforms holding hands, skipping through puddles of gold plan that the Nintendo seems to have out there. Some are saying the Switch signifies actually a very historic change for Nintendo, and that from this point on, it's not going to support both a home console with it's also a portable and a portable that's portable, the way it's done since, well, you know, the days of the Game Boy.
Analyst David Gibson told Bloomberg the 3DS will hang around for a few years because of the big install base, but ultimately the goal is for the Switch to become their one and only platform for hardware. It's part of the biggest evolution to the company in 3 decades.
But is it a mega evolution?
Ooh.
In a summer meeting with Nintendo shareholders, company president Tatsumi Kimishima suggested that the handheld devices are going to continue to stick around, so that's their official stance. He said, "We understand that Nintendo Switch is diversifying the way people play games. We hope to provide as many different ways to play as possible for both our home console and handheld systems."
So we'll see what happens, but despite what Nintendo says, it's kind of hard to see the 3DS sticking around for too much longer, especially if their biggest franchises like Pokemon decide to move on to the Switch. On the other hand, if we know anything about Nintendo, they're gonna do whatever the hell they want.
They're gonna Nintendo.
Yeah.
And you know, also there are a lot of things you need to read between the lines. They're not exactly gonna tell investors, like, until the Switch has got a lot more momentum behind it. So
exactly.
I'm not that surprised they're not talking about sunsetting their super successful handheld just yet. But what do you guys think about something like Pokemon potentially quitting the 3DS? That's pretty big, right? Would you be sad to see the handheld go, or are you also looking to consolidate? Let us know in the comments.
And for all of your Nintendo news, including when we all get to chuck our 3DSs, be sure to like this video. And if you're new around here, subscribe to the know.
I've got like a drawer full of 3DSs.
You do, you have a lot.
I've got my Australian one, and then I have a red 3DS, and I got the Animal Crossing 3DS, and I have the red new 3DS.
But with the Switch's portability and a strong launch, lots of people have speculated that this is where Nintendo's focus will be. But Reggie Fils-Aimé, going for it.